Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a world of scratchy wool, stiff theology, and truly judgmental neighbors. Yes, Puritan New England. Imagine waking up not to your phone alarm, but to the sound of a rooster that thinks 4:30 a.m. is perfectly reasonable. The floor's freezing, your blanket is one layer of rough wool, and your pillow is basically a sack of corn husks that's plotting against your spine. You sit up, already in trouble. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the uneven planks of your little home in Salem Village, 1692. The sun hasn't risen yet, it's more of a vague suggestion on the horizon, but the day has already begun. You're not allowed to complain, not that you dare. In this house, work begins the second your eyes open and continues until the Lord says you may sleep, or until you faint, whichever comes first. The fire's gone out overnight, and the cold bites at your fingers as you fumble to restart it. There's no coffee, obviously. Coffee is suspicious, warmth is conditional. The fireplace grumbles as you coax life into it, and you shiver in your tooth in shift, remembering that your neighbor's child died last winter from a chill that started just like this. You whisper a prayer as the sparks catch, because in Puritan New England, God listens to everything, even your mumbled matches. One wrong phrase, one missed omen, and you've invited suspicion. Historians still argue whether Puritan religion was more about devotion or about social control, but this morning, you just want your porridge not to freeze solid in the bowl. Your mother is already dressed, somehow, in layers of linen, wool, and moral superiority. She eyes your uncombed hair. Sloth is the devil's grooming, she mutters. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's a test. Oatmeal, no sugar, no spice, no joy. You chew it like you're being punished, which, arguably, you are. The spoon's wood is splintered from decades of penitential porridge scooping. Your father reads scripture aloud between bites, his voice rising every time you dare look out the window. Outside is the forest, and the forest is where the devil does his landscaping. A chicken pecks at the window. It looks judgmental. You nod along to the sermon within breakfast and try not to think about how many hours until lunch. Hint, it's more than 6 outside. The morning fog clings low over the thatched rooftops. You see Goody Hawkins sweeping her doorstep with unnecessary aggression. She's probably mad about the time you accidentally smiled during the Lord's Day, or the time you complimented her daughter's embroidery, or the time your shadow crossed her doorstep too late in the evening. Honestly, with Puritans, it's hard to know what sets someone off, though it's usually you. They say Salem Village is small, but it feels like a pressure cooker made of wood, wool, and unresolved spiritual tension. It's quiet here, but not in a peaceful way. It's the kind of quiet that presses in on your skull and makes you wonder if someone's watching. Spoiler, they are, and they're keeping notes. You step outside to fetch water from the communal pump, careful to keep your eyes low. Heaven forbid you look too friendly or too distant. A neutral expression is safest, though even that might be interpreted as smug. You practice your unassuming peasant face. It probably still looks smug. Every house around you looks the same: dark timber frames, tiny windows, a door that creaks ominously even when no one touches it. The ground squishes beneath your boots, and the mud smells like old soup and unspoken resentment. You wave at Goody Parsons, and she blinks at you like you just confessed to goat murder. The pump handle squeaks. You pump quickly, because lingering might be idleness, and idleness leads directly to eternal damnation, or, worse, a talking to from Deacon Flint. The water is cold and a bit gritty. You remind yourself that this is considered refreshing. A shout echoes down the road. Someone's sheep got into someone else's garden. Again, the shouting lasts a bit too long. You catch the word blight and hex and decide it's probably safest to walk faster. Historians still debate whether the paranoia in Puritan communities was fueled more by religious fervor or by crop failure-induced cabin fever. Either way, this place runs on anxiety and dried beans. You make it back inside just in time for the second round of prayers. This set is longer. Your knees are sore. Your left leg is asleep. Your brother whispers a joke about the minister's wig and is immediately glared at like he summoned Satan with punchlines. Still, for a moment, the image of Reverend Harrow's wig slipping sideways gives you a ripple of rebellious joy. You smile, a small smile. You look up and see your mother frowning. Uh-oh, joyful expression outside of worship is on the list of concerns. Along with loud thoughts and visible ankles, you pray harder, trying to repent for the smile, for the oatmeal that still feels lodged in your throat, for the chicken you think is cursing you through the window. You're not sure which sins are most dangerous anymore. Outside, the sun finally clears the treetops, but it doesn't feel warm. You know it's going to be a long day. Not just in hours, but in how many ways you'll be expected to atone, adjust, apologize, and then apologize for apologizing wrong. And it's still only breakfast. You step outside again, this time with more purpose, or at least the illusion of it. Everyone here is always walking briskly, as if the Lord himself has a stopwatch. You've been told 1,000 times that idle hands are the devil's tools, which makes you wonder what the devil builds with all these imaginary tools. Maybe chairs that are actually comfortable. Your first real task of the morning is to help with meal preparation for the midday repast. Calling it lunch would be suspiciously modern. But even this isn't as straightforward as it sounds. Because you, dear outsider, are about to commit your first major Puritan offense of the day. Improperly cooked porridge. Your fire is a bit too lively. The oat sticks slightly to the pot. And the smell wafting through the room isn't quite the ideal aroma of humble righteousness. You don't know it yet. But Goody Thatcher down the road is going to bring this up at the next town meeting. She has very strong feelings about overboiled barley. As you stir and fret, your cousin Jonathan arrives, red in the face and out of breath. You weren't at the morning testimony circle, he hisses. They were talking about you. You drop the spoon. It lands with a soggy thunk that somehow echoes louder than thunder. Apparently, your absence from the gathering of testimonies today's theme, divine punishment by livestock, was noted. You were never told about the gathering, but ignorance is not a valid defense in Salem. Neither is but I was making food. In fact, food might be your second mistake. Historians still argue whether the Puritan obsession with moral discipline extended into every aspect of daily life, or if it was just the natural result of cold weather and deeply judgmental facial expressions. But either way, today you are the oat-scorching sinner in the town's eyes, as you carry the porridge pot toward the communal hearth because everyone's eating together today. In the big hole you try to think of a way to explain yourself that doesn't make things worse. I was cooking sounds lazy. I was praying privately sounds prideful. I didn't know sounds suspiciously like lying. Along the way, you nod to Reverend Harrow. His expression never changes. It's a permanent squint, like he's trying to spot sin on your forehead. He says nothing, which is somehow worse than being yelled at. The hall is already buzzing, not with joy, obviously, but with that peculiar Puritan energy that feels like passive aggression in long skirts. The benches creak as people sit, someone coughs, and half the room flinches. You find a seat beside Goody Parsons, who moves her spoon a few inches away from you like your proximity might rot her soup. When your porridge is served, it's met with a polite silence. Polite silences in Puritan New England are often more scathing than shouted condemnation. Someone whispers about the bitterness. Someone else says nothing, but looks pointedly at your ladle. You try to eat quickly, quietly, but that's when your spoon clinks against the bowl a little too loudly. Goody Hawkins raises her eyebrow. Your heart races. One more offense, and you'll be on the observed with concern list. Again, still, the meal continues. A man across the table tells a story about his neighbor's cat hissing during prayer, and how that must surely be a sign. Another recounts how his cousin sneezed 3 times in church, and was asked to sit in the penance pew. You laugh, just a tiny, tired snort. They all hear it. Goody Parsons narrows her eyes. Did you find Brother Lathrop's testimony amusing? You shake your head. No, just. I had some oats up my nose. She squints. We'll see. And that's how you realize laughter is dangerous here, not just forbidden, but deeply unsettling to the Puritan soul. Joy must be structured, blessed, and preferably explained with a scriptural reference. After the meal, everyone files out with the solemnity of a funeral procession. You try to blend in, walking slowly, face neutral, but inside, you're spiraling. Will they mention the porridge, the laugh, the missing testimony circle? What if someone heard you humming this morning? What if they could tell you enjoyed it? You retreat to the edge of the village, pretending to inspect the herb garden, hoping the air might clear your mind. The wind smells like cold earth and judgment. You try to relax, but it's not long before you hear the wooden footsteps of Elder Merton behind you. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't have to. Pride, he says, his voice like a pine branch snapping. Pride keeps the ears close to the Lord. You nod slowly, trying to figure out what exactly he's accusing you of. Were you aware, he continues, that your absence from this morning's gathering disrupted the spiritual flow of the meeting? Several attendees commented on it. Goody Parsons in particular seemed troubled. You look down at your hands. I was making porridge. The sound he makes is not approval. It's a placeholder for pending judgment. And what of the amusement at Brother Lathrop's cat testimony? You try to come up with anything that sounds pious. It reminded me that even the beasts of the field may feel the Lord's presence in unexpected ways. There's a pause. Elder Merton stares at you. You'll be expected to attend reflection circle tonight. Prepare a passage from Leviticus, one on pestilence. You nod. Yes, Elder. He leaves. You exhale. You pick a handful of time and pretend it matters. The sky has turned grey, and your breath clouds the air. You feel the weight of invisible eyes again. In this place, every meal, every sound, every step is a risk. Not because there's war, or famine, or wild beasts, though those exist too, but because you live among people who see missteps as spiritual betrayals, and unfortunately, you keep stepping. You're not sure how the town water pump became a spiritual battleground, but here you are juggling a heavy wooden bucket and trying to avoid the gaze of Goody Parsons, who is standing a little too still under a tree, like she's rehearsing your execution in her head. The pump squeaks with every motion, a high-pitched, judgmental whine that matches the mood perfectly. The wood beneath your boots is slick with slush and old soap. You glance sideways. 2 girls, Deborah and Ruth, daughters of the town's most zealous deacon, are filling their own pails, but they keep pausing to whisper and peek over at you. You smile politely. Big mistake. They immediately turn away and begin muttering. Ruth crosses herself. Deborah drops her ladle. You have committed the cardinal Puritan crime, unsanctioned friendliness. You turn back to your water, which is coming out slower now, more sullen. You focus on the rhythm pump, groan, splash, trying to drown out the sounds of giggling behind you, except it's not giggling now. It's hissing, and not from the girls. It's Goody Parsons. She's moving now, her boots squelching through the mud like God's own bounty hunter. You smiled, she says. Her voice is low, like she's speaking on behalf of some higher yet still deeply annoyed authority. At those girls, you shrug. I was being polite. She takes a deep breath, then steps even closer. Politeness is the devil's camouflage. You blink. That doesn't sound like something Jesus said. But in Puritan New England, interpretations are flexible. You glance around. A few others have stopped to watch. You recognize the Cooper boys, always eager for a good public shaming. Goody Parsons leans in. Deborah says your eyes turned black for a moment. Ruth says your smile was unnatural. You want to say that maybe Ruth's never seen a smile. But instead, You choose survival. I was just thanking them for making room at the pump. A spell, then, she concludes, nodding, a courtesy hex. That's how it begins. Historians still argue whether the rampant accusations of witchcraft were the result of deep-rooted misogyny, mass hysteria, or just extremely boring winters. Whatever the reason, you're now one friendly gesture away from the gallows. Goody Parsons sniffs the air. I smell rosemary. You nod. Yes, from the garden. You know rosemary is used to mask sin, she says, interrupting you with the same energy as someone catching you with a flask of brimstone. It disguises the scent of rot. You are suddenly very aware of how warm your neck feels, despite the cold. You try to back away slowly, muttering something about reflection circle preparation, but it's too late. Goody Parsons raises one hand, always a bad sign, and announces loudly, I believe it is time to speak to the council about what I have seen. This may be a test. You want to ask, a test of what? But again, survival. You nod respectfully, mutter a meek God's will be done, and speed walk back towards your home. Not too fast, though. Running makes you look guilty. Or possessed, or French. The worst part, you still haven't gotten the water. Back inside, your mother is darning socks with the same fury most people reserve for fighting dragons. You took your time, she says. You hand her the half-full bucket. There was a line. She squints. A lie is still a lie, even if it's convenient. You want to scream, but instead, you pull out your Bible, not for spiritual fortification, but because you have to prepare a passage on pestilence for tonight's reflection circle. You choose Leviticus 26 to 25, which seems appropriately threatening. Then you think better of it and add a bit of Psalm 91, just in case someone wants hope. Balance. As you read aloud to yourself, you realize you're being watched. Not by your mother, she's busy attacking a sock, but by your little brother, who is crouched behind the hearth, eyes wide. What? You ask. He leans in and whispers, I saw you talking to Goody Parsons. You sigh. It wasn't a conversation. It was more of a spiritual interrogation. She said your shadow didn't match your body. You pause. That doesn't even make sense, he shrugs. I just thought you should know. You nod. Thanks. He doesn't leave. Also, if they arrest you, can I have your bed? You stare. He smiles innocently. You suspect this is how entire generations of Puritans survived, by ratting out their siblings. Later that afternoon, you're sent to the community storehouse to collect more beans. Because Puritans believe in discipline, but they also believe in legumes. The storehouse is cold and smells like smoked fish and quiet grudges. You're not alone. 3 other villagers are inside, counting sacks of flour like they're inventorying sins. You nod politely, take your allotted beans, and are about to leave when someone says, Did you really smile at the deacon's girls? You freeze. It's Eliphile Cooper, the one who once got his shoes muddy and claimed it was divine punishment for impure thoughts. He's standing there like a scarecrow with opinions. You nod once. I did. He shakes his head. Shouldn't have done that. You agree. I know, but Eliphile isn't satisfied. He leans in. You know they say Goody Parsons caught a devil in a jar last spring. You blink. I thought that was a frog. Same thing, if it hisses, he says seriously. Historians still debate whether villagers genuinely believed in demonic jars or simply used these stories as cautionary tales to enforce social norms. But you're starting to think maybe Eliphile just enjoys being spooky. You finally escape the storehouse, clutching your beans like they're your only defense, which, at this point, they might be. Back home, the sun is beginning its slow descent, casting long, suspicious shadows across the snow. You feel tired, but it's the kind of tired that comes from too many sideways glances and whispered rumors, and you know tonight's reflection circle will be intense, especially now that you're bringing beans and pestilence. You arrive early to the meeting house not out of piety, but because you want to claim a spot in the second row. The front row is for the truly devout, or those auditioning to be seen as such. The back row is where troublemakers sit, either out of defiance or because they're usually dragged in last minute by someone's stern aunt. The second row is safe, neutral, the Switzerland of pews. The room smells like pine resin, coal stone, and anxious expectation. Candles flicker in their iron sconces, casting long shadows that make everyone look vaguely guilty. You clutch your Bible and your notes, trying to look like someone who has definitely not been accused of smiling at teenagers. People begin filing in, boots thudding, skirts swishing, voices hushed. Every single person nods at you in that tight-lipped, vaguely disapproving Puritan way that somehow says, "Peace be with you, and I know what you did," simultaneously. Then Goody Parsons enters. She doesn't sit. She stands near the wall, arms folded, face serene in that deeply threatening way some suns on firewood paintings have. You try not to make eye contact. You try even harder not to think about Rosemary. Reverend Harrow takes the pulpit with all the theatrical flourish of a man who has spent his life mastering the art of spiritual guilt trips. He doesn't open with a greeting. That would imply warmth. Instead, he launches straight into it. Leviticus tells us the Lord will send pestilence among those who break his covenant. You glance down at your notes. You had the same verse picked out. Of course you did, he continues. And what is pestilence but a cleansing, a reminder, a correction? You're beginning to wonder if this is still about the smile, or if something even worse is coming. He paces slowly, like a holy panther, surveying the congregation. Today, we reflect on subtle sins, sins that creep, that grin. Oh no. You shift slightly in your seat, but it creaks loudly. Every head within 3 pews turns. You force yourself to stillness, though your knees are protesting. You've been sitting too long on wood that was never designed with human anatomy in mind. Reverend Harrow begins calling on people to stand and share reflections. You watch as neighbors rise and speak in turn. Confessions of intrusive thoughts, of envy, of dreams they weren't sure were godly. One man admits to imagining a horse kicking the deacon. No one laughs. When your name is called, you stand slowly, gripping the edge of the pew. Leviticus 26-25, you say, "And I will bring a sword upon you, that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye are gathered together within your cities, I will send the pestilence among you." Your voice echoes slightly in the cold hall. You swallow and continue. But I believe that sometimes the pestilence is not physical, but spiritual. That a lack of charity, a lack of trust in our neighbors, can become a kind of plague eating away at the soul. There's a pause. It stretches just a bit too long. Historians still argue whether Puritan society left any room for nuance, or if its rigidity was precisely the point. But you can feel it now, that tension between piety and paranoia, between sincerity and spectacle. Goody Parsons tilts her head. You think you see her smirk. Or maybe it's a tick. Hard to say. You sit. The meeting continues. More scripture, more declarations. One man confesses to smiling in his sleep and fears it may have been devil-induced. Someone else reports hearing whistling behind the church. There's a collective gasp. Whistling is not allowed. At the end of the gathering, Reverend Harrow closes with a prayer for discernment. Lord, show us the ones who wear sheep's clothing but bear the teeth of wolves. Your mother mutters Amen with just enough volume to be heard. As the crowd disperses, you feel the cold air settle deeper in your bones. Night has fully fallen, and outside, the moon glows weakly through a veil of clouds. Snowflakes begin to drift lazily from the sky, as if even the weather is exhausted by today's drama. You head home, half expecting someone to throw holy water at you along the way. None do, but you do hear whispering behind you. You quicken your pace. Back inside, your father nods silently at your return. He's been carving something from wood, probably a spoon, possibly a sermon. Your mother is folding linens with mechanical precision. No one speaks, until your little brother, bless him, asks, "Are you a witch now?" You blink. What? He shrugs. You talked about pestilence and feelings. That's how it starts, right? You sigh and head to your corner of the loft, where your bedstraw stuffed into ticking cloth awaits, like a slightly aggressive hay bale. You lie down, still fully clothed, because it's too cold to change. The ceiling beams creak above you. You hear an owl outside. Or maybe it's Goody Parsons in bird form. You wouldn't put it past her. Sleep doesn't come easy. You replay the entire reflection circle in your head. The verses, the stares, the near smirk. Your pulse finally begins to slow. Then you remember something. You forgot to refill the water bucket after dinner. Your eyes snap open. You'll have to do it tomorrow. At the pump, again. And you'll have to smile, less. Morning comes not with a gentle sunrise, but with a thud of broom handle rapping the rafters above your head. Your mother's version of a wake-up call is slightly more aggressive than a rooster, but no less consistent. You blink at the ceiling beams, still wrapped in yesterday's linen shift and vague shame. Outside, the village stirs with the muffled rhythm of chores, boots crunching frozen soil, goats complaining, axes splitting firewood in clean, defiant cracks. Inside, it smells like ash and boiled cabbage, two things the Puritans have mastered to the point of despair. You sit up and instantly regret it. Your spine has aged a decade overnight. Your legs ache from too much sitting. Your neck from too much nodding. Being pious is terrible for posture. Downstairs, your mother is already scolding your brother about using wanton language. He said maybe. That was enough. You gather yourself, prepare for another day in which merely existing is suspect, and descend the ladder that functions as your staircase. You immediately stub your toe, quietly, heroically. Your task this morning, fetch ingredients from the root cellar and prepare the midday meal with your sister, Mercy, who has the emotional warmth of cold gravy. She hands you a list written in smudged charcoal, turnips, onions, dried peas. No leaks. Last week's leeks had molded suspiciously. You wrap yourself in a cloak that used to belong to an uncle you're not supposed to ask about, and step out into the brittle air. The snow crunches underfoot, the trees creak in the wind, and from somewhere near the commons, you hear a goat scream like it's possessed. Honestly, it might be. As you unlatch the cellar door, a gust of icy air hits your face, carrying with it the unique aroma of buried vegetables and mild regret. You descend into the gloom and start gathering. The baskets are half empty, and one of the turnips is shaped disturbingly like Reverend Harrow. You put it back. Historians still argue whether New England's dietary choices were a matter of pious humility or sheer agricultural limitation. Either way, you'll be eating sadness stew again. You carry the whole back to the kitchen, where Mercy is already boiling something that smells like boiled nothing. She doesn't look up. Did you touch the leeks? No. Did you look at the leeks? I avoided them entirely. Good. You prepare the peas in silence. The room is cold enough to keep meat, if you had any. You don't. You do, however, have salt generously applied as both seasoning and metaphor. As you peel onions with frozen fingers, Mercy finally breaks the silence. Goody Parsons spoke to Mother. You pause mid-peel. What did she say? She said you have a wandering spirit. You blink. What does that even mean? It means, Mercy says, that your eyes look in places your soul isn't ready for. You snort. Sounds like she needs a hobby. Mercy raises an eyebrow. That's the kind of comment that gets you stoned. You finish the onions in silence. By midday, the meal is ready, if you can call it that. The stew is hot, bland, and vaguely beige. The bread is hard enough to be considered a weapon. Your father thanks the Lord with a prayer that doubles as a lecture. May this humble meal remind us that we do not feast for pleasure, but for strength in service to God. You wonder if God ever just wanted a snack. After eating, you help clean the bowls. The water is lukewarm and gritty, and the rag smells like centuries of unresolved sin. As you scrub, you overhear your parents whispering in the next room. She was seen lingering near the pump again, your mother says. She's always been. Curious, your father replies cautiously. Curious is how it starts. You dry the bowls slower. You think about how many people have started this way. The line between curiosity and heresy is razor thin. And you read the wrong song once, and someone took notes. That afternoon, you're sent to deliver bread to Goody Matlock, who broke her ankle chasing a pig that may or may not have been bewitched. You don't ask questions anymore. You bundle up and head down the path, bread in hand, eyes cast downward like a good little servant of righteousness. You pass a few villagers along the way. Everyone nods, no one smiles. Goody Matlock lives at the edge of the woods, not quite out of town, but close enough that visiting her feels like you're tiptoeing into danger. Her house is small, crooked, and surrounded by a garden that still grows somehow under snow. She answers the door herself, hobbling with a cane carved into the shape of a snake. Bold, bread, you say, holding it out. She takes it, sniffs it, then peers at you. You're the one who asked about rosemary, aren't you? You blink. I may have. She nods. People around here don't ask about herbs. They burn them. There's a long pause. You try not to sweat. Goody Matlock leans on her cane and says, "They say I talked to birds once, that I danced by moonlight. But all I ever did was listen. You're not sure what to say, so you nod." She smiles, a real one. Don't lose that curiosity, child. Even if it burns you, you leave quickly. On the walk back, the air feels heavier. The woods rustle a little too deliberately. You hurry your steps, not from fear of wolves but from fear of words. Because here, whispers spread faster than frost, and dinner is coming. Which means prayers, reflection, and a whole new set of chances to mess everything up. You're back home just in time to help set the evening fire, which is really just a smoky argument between damp logs and your dwindling patience. You cough as smoke creeps into your eyes, stinging like someone else's guilt. The room fills with that familiar blend of soot, cabbage, and quiet judgment, a typical Puritan aroma. Your mother is kneading dough with the focus of someone imagining it's the devil's face. Your father sharpens a blade that may or may not be destined for kindling. Mercy sits nearby, mending your brother's sock with tiny, aggressive stitches. No one speaks. It's too early for words, too late for small talk, and far too dangerous for jokes. You try to ease the tension with a helpful suggestion. Maybe we could add rosemary to the bread. You offer. Everyone freezes. Your mother turns slowly. Where did you get that idea? Goody Matlock, you say, instantly regretting it. Silence. She said it helps digestion. Your father sets the blade down carefully, but meaningfully. That woman also said she saw Satan in the shape of a cricket. Well, you mumble. Maybe it was just a weird cricket. Mercy gasps. Your mother crosses herself. Your little brother, without missing a beat, points at you and whispers, which, you sigh and sit down, folding your hands like you're trying to contain the chaos of your own thoughts. Historians still debate whether the Puritans genuinely feared the devil in all things, or whether it became a kind of spiritual performance, art something between survival strategy and neighborhood theater. But tonight, you are in the front row, starring as suspicious child number one. As dinner is served turnip mush and stale bread with a side of suspicious glances, you do your best to eat with the humility of someone who did not just commit heresy by suggesting herbs. The fire crackles, a spoon clinks, the mood hangs thick. Then, as if summoned, the conversation turns. Do you remember the case of Thomas Flint? Your father says. Everyone nods. Of course you do. Everyone does. He said the Lord came to him in a dream and told him to carve a new hymn tune. Your father continues. 3 days later, he was mute, still is. Some say he sings only in his sleep. Some say he swallowed a spider. Mercy adds. He played with music, your mother says, as if that's worse. You chew your bread. It tastes dry, but the dread helps it go down. After dinner, you help clean the bowls again, this time carefully avoiding eye contact with your brother, who is clearly waiting for you to slip up so he can add dish-related rebellion to your list of offenses. Then comes the moment you've been dreading, family scripture recitation. Tonight's theme is obedience through stillness, which sounds suspiciously like don't speak unless you're already perfect. You're asked to read aloud. Of course you are. You pick Psalm 94, when I said, "My foot slippeth. Thy mercy, O Lord, held me up." It's a safe choice, short, contrite, slightly poetic. Your father nods, a reminder that we are upheld not by ourselves, but by the discipline we embrace. Your brother coughs. She also read Rosemary poems last week. You glare at him. They were about winter. She's lying. He whispers in a tone so pure, so self-righteous, you almost admire it. She forgets that the tongue is a fire. Your mother adds ominously, quoting James 3-6, like it's about to be printed on a wanted poster. You can feel yourself sinking into the floorboards. If you could vanish into the hearth, you might. But no one has time for existential drama. There's still laundry to beat and goats to check. Later that evening, after chores and the final family prayer, you're sent to bring the shoe buckles in from the porch. They don't trust them to be left out overnight. Someone once lost a pair to wind, and it was considered an omen. Outside, the air bites. The moon hangs like an accusation. You bend to gather the buckles, but as you straighten, you hear it. A low, shuddering moan. You freeze. It's coming from Goody Hawkins' property, her barn, to be specific. A shadow moves across the slats of the wall, long, twisting, too fluid to be human. You back away slowly. You're not sure if it was an animal or a prayer gone wrong, but you're absolutely sure it wasn't your business. You return inside, clutching the buckles like they might ward off whatever that was. Your father is waiting. You took your time. There was a noise. Perhaps the Lord wanted your attention. You nod. He got it. Your mother hands you a wool blanket and points to your cot. Rest. Tomorrow. You help me sort the tallow. Tallow, of course. Nothing like melting animal fat at dawn to purify the soul. You lie down, curling beneath the itchy blanket, eyes fixed on the ceiling. You can still hear the sound, the moan, the creak, the shadow scraping the barn wall like a brushstroke on fear. You wonder what it was. Then you wonder if you're allowed to wonder at all. The next morning greets you with a familiar sensation, dread wrapped in wool. Your blanket has twisted itself into a rope around your legs, your pillow is mysteriously damp, and there's a patch of frost on the inside of the window. Welcome back to Puritan New England, where even your dreams are suspect and your toes never really thaw. You swing your legs off the cot, testing the floor with the same hesitation you used before stepping onto a frozen pond. It creaks under your weight, not out of protest, but as a solemn reminder that the house is always listening. Downstairs, your mother is already ladling something grey and lumpy into wooden bowls. It's either porridge or penance, you won't know until you taste it. Wear your heavier cloak today, she says. You're going past the southern fence. You blink. The woods, yes. Deliver this to Elder Wentham's widow. Her cough is worsening. Your heart gives a polite shudder. The southern fence is where the wilderness begins. Past that, shadows, pines, things that don't have names or worse, have old names. You bundle yourself in layers, linen shift, woolen tunic, rough cloak, borrowed courage. You take the cloth-wrapped bundle, some bread, dried apples, and the mysterious paste your mother insists will draw the humours out, and step into the biting morning air. The walk is long, quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. The houses thin out, the fence is lean. You pass a frozen pond where someone once claimed to see a girl's reflection smiling back even though she wasn't. That girl now lives in Boston, or so they say. You reach the fence. It's not much, just 3 rails and the word beware carved in Latin, because apparently fear sounds better in classical languages. You duck beneath it and continue along the narrow path, which is less a trail and more of a suggestion. Trees crowd closer. The air smells like pine, damp moss, and something deeper like wet stone wrapped in memory. Then you see it, Widow Wentham's cottage, slouched against a hill, chimney whispering a reluctant column of smoke. You knock, no answer. You knock again, a creak. The door opens on its own. You hesitate, then enter. It smells of thyme, mildew, and boiled onions, classic Puritan perfume. The room is dim, lit only by coals and the faint, flickering glow of a dying candle. Widow Wentham is there, hunched in her chair, a shawl pulled tight, eyes closed. You step closer. Widow Wentham. She doesn't move, goody. She coughs violently, her eyes snap open, and for a moment, you swear she looks surprised to see you, like she was expecting someone else. You hand her the bundle. She clutches it with claw-like fingers. You came through the woods. You nod. The road was snowed over. They watch from the trees. She mutters. I heard them last night. They speak in tongues, but backwards. You try not to flinch. The wind can sound like voices. She leans closer. It wasn't the wind. And it wasn't prayers. Historians still argue whether Puritan fear of the forest was rooted in spiritual anxiety or simply a lack of understanding about their ecosystem. But to the people living here, the forest wasn't nature. It was unseen judgment. Widow Wentham takes a bite of the bread, chews thoughtfully, then says, they only come for the ones who doubt. You clear your throat. I should return before dark, of course. You wouldn't want them to follow you. You try to smile politely, but your lips don't quite cooperate. The walk back is slower, not physically, but mentally. Every rustling branch sounds like a whispered warning. You avoid looking too deep into the woods. You remember Goody Matlock's crooked smile. The shadow behind the barn. You remember your brother asking for your bed. The village comes into view like a relief map of repression. Familiar rooftops, familiar fences, familiar judgment. When you cross back over the southern fence, someone is waiting. Elder Merton. He doesn't speak. He just watches you. Delivery, you explain, lifting your now empty hands. He nods. You took a long route. The snow, you say. He studies you. Did you speak to anything else while you were out? You blink. Just the widow. He steps closer. Sometimes the trees answer back. You manage to keep your face still. I trust you'll share what you heard, he says. You nod. Of course. He doesn't move. You realize he's waiting, not for the story, for your confession. You start to speak, but then the church bell rings in the distance. Evening prayers, a reprieve from judgment. Or maybe just a rescheduling. He steps aside. You pass him, heart pounding like a guilty drum, and walk straight home, where you'll pretend this was just another errand, just another chill, just another whisper in the woods. And tomorrow, you have to help with soap, which, in Puritan New England, is somehow even worse. Soap day arrives with the same grim finality as a sermon on sign. The air is bitter with cold, and sharper still with the unmistakable tang of rendered fatter scent that clings to wool, to skin, to the inner corners of your soul. Outside, a thin plume of smoke rises from the soap kettle, like the village itself is sighing. Making soap here isn't just about cleanliness. It's an act of purification, of penance. Fire, fat, and ash, the holy trinity of domestic redemption. The task demands silence, precision, and tolerance for the kind of smell that makes even your teeth feel greasy. The kettle waits in the yard like a great iron judge. You stir the contents slowly, methodically, each pass of the paddle thickening the mixture into something between paste and punishment. Steam rises around your face, curling through your lashes, dampening your collar. The chill in the air can't pierce this fog, this blistering humidity of human industry and ancestral shame. Behind you, someone stacks logs with metronomic rhythm. It's either mercy or the wrath of God at this point. You're not sure. There's a difference. The woodpile groans, the paddle drags, the fire pops like it disapproves. You continue to stir. The soap itself is alive in a way, bubbling, hissing, clinging to the sides of the cauldron as if reluctant to become what it must. Lye, rendered tallow, and ash fuse under heat into something sharp, caustic, and holy. There is no fragrance here, no lavender, no mint. Just the brutal honesty of purification in its rawest form. The work is physical, repetitive, your arms ache. Your back bends at an angle that no spine should hold for long. Your skin begins to itch from the heat and the humidity. Around you, the landscape of the yard blurs, tree trunks greyed with frost, the outhouse leaning like it's gossiping about you, a single crow perched on the fence, still and silent as a statue. Time slows. The sky turns an indifferent shade of pale. You feel like you've been stirring 4 hours. Maybe you have. The only clock in this place is the movement of your body, the feel of sweat sliding down your ribs beneath to many layers. A gust of wind shifts the smoke. It stings your eyes, tears well and slide down, carving lines through soot and salt. You blink them away and keep stirring. Soap is power, they say in a village obsessed with sin. Cleanliness is next to godliness, not because it feels good, but because it hurts to get there. That sting in your hands, that's not failure. That's the Lord scrubbing you raw. Historians often debate whether soap making in Puritan settlements was truly an act of faith, or merely another layer of survival dressed in scriptural justification. But to you, today, it feels like both. You're not just making something to wash with, you're making something that proves you're worthy of being clean. When the soap reaches the right consistency, it's poured into wooden molds, left to cool and harden into rough grey bricks. There's no applause, no satisfaction, only silence. A job done, not well, but dutifully. You scrape the paddle clean, wipe your hands on the hem of your cloak, and return the tools to the shed with the reverence of someone burying a weapon. As you do, you notice something odd. Near the shed, in the snow footprints. Just one set, too large for a child, to bear 4 cents. You follow them a few steps, heart rising slightly in your throat. They lead to the edge of the woods, and then vanish. The snow isn't deep, but the prints should continue. They don't, not into the trees. Not to the side, just gone. A chill prickles your scalp. You scan the tree line, but the forest stares back blankly. You turn quickly, unwilling to entertain what it could mean. Not here, not today. You return to the house. The soap smell follows you inside, clinging like gossip. Your mother nods once when she sees you. There's no praise. There never is. The soap will cure. It will be used. It will scrape across skin already rubbed thin by winter and worrying. And yet, tonight, as you lie in bed, the image returns. Those footsteps abrupt, solitary, and impossible. Were they real, or were they a warning? The village has rules for things you can see, and even more rules for things you shouldn't. You roll over and close your eyes, but the woods still linger behind them. You awaken to shouting sharp, clipped, and much too close. The kind of shouting that wraps itself around your ribs before you've even fully opened your eyes. You sit up in your cot, blinking through the pale winter light. Outside, voices carry across the frozen village green. You pull on your cloak and step into your boots, still damp from yesterday's slush. The floor groans beneath your feet as you cross it, the sound swallowed instantly by the cold, thick air of the house. No one else moves. That, more than anything, tells you something is wrong. Your family is up there just staying quiet, listening. You step outside. The frost bites your face immediately. Across the green, near the meeting house, 3 men are gathered, 2 of them holding lanterns, one with a musket slung over his shoulder. At their feet is a basket. Its contents are spilled in the snow. Eggs, a heel of bread, a child's doll, broken, forgotten. The watchman speaks low and fast to Elder Merton. You only catch pieces of it. Found just before dawn, the door was open. No sign of struggle, but something unnatural. You step closer. No one stops you. That alone is unusual. It turns out Goody Albright's daughter is missing. Not a child. Margaret is 14, which is just old enough to be responsible for her soul, and just young enough to have no idea what to do with it. She was last seen before dusk, fetching kindling. Her shoes are still by the fire. Her bonnet hangs by the door. The hearth is cold. The community moves like an injured animal, slow, uncertain, watching its own shadow. Soon, the whispers begin. She was always strange. She asked too many questions. She smiled during the fast. You don't need to be told what comes next. You've lived this story your whole life. Once someone disappears, they become whatever the village needs them to be. A warning, a fable, a vessel for all the fear that no one wants to admit. By mid-morning, the entire town is involved in the search. You're sent to check near the fields. The wind howls across the empty furrows, and the snow here is thinner, crusted into brittle sheets. You walk in wide arcs, scanning the white, looking for something: footprints, a ribbon, a sign, anything. Instead, you find silence, but not the good kind. This silence is heavy, watching, the kind that hums just under the skin. You pause near the edge of the woods. Something catches your eye: faint scratches in the frost, like something was dragged, but not by human hands. You crouch to examine them, but they end abruptly, as if the earth changed its mind. You straighten. The hairs on your arms stand up beneath your cloak. You turn back quickly and head toward the village, boots crunching faster now. Historians still debate whether disappearances in these isolated towns were caused by wild animals, desperate escapes, or something less easily catalogued. But the villagers never hesitated to assign meaning, and that meaning was usually supernatural. Back in Salem village, the mood is coiling tight. The search party has come back empty-handed. The minister has been called. The watchman won't stop checking the same 3 footprints outside the Albright home. Evening falls early. That night, a candlelight prayer circle is called in the meeting house. You're there, like everyone else, sitting still on a splintered bench, eyes forward, hands folded. You recite the Psalms, but your mind drifts. The woods, the scratches, the silence. Margaret, Reverend Harrow speaks of sign, of temptation, of doorways that open too easily when faith is thin. Then he says something that makes the room inhale as one. There are spirits that walk in winter, quiet spirits. Patient ones. They do not knock, they invite. The congregation goes perfectly still. Then he adds, we must search for the crack in our community that let this spirit in. Your throat tightens. Because you know exactly where everyone will start looking. Margaret was quiet. But you asked about herbs. You smiled. You burned the porridge. By the end of the prayer, Goody Parsons is already looking at you with a face like dried fruit and divine certainty. You head home in silence. The snow crunches. Your breath ghosts in front of you. That night, sleep comes late. And when it does, you dream of the woods again. But this time, you see her, standing barefoot, pale, just beyond the fence. She does not speak, but you understand her perfectly. Morning comes slowly, dragging itself across the rooftops like a tired sentinel. The frost hasn't melted, and the sky is a dull pewter. But something in the air has changed, not the wind, not the weather, but the weight. Salem village feels heavier today, heavier in its silences. Heavier in the way footsteps pause, just a moment longer before doors open. Margaret Albright is still gone. It's been more than a full day now, and the village's whispers have hardened into quiet consensus. Something unnatural has happened. Something ungodly. You're assigned to go to the village market this morning, ostensibly to collect flour, but truly, you know what this is. It's reconnaissance. Your mother wants ears in the crowd, eyes on expressions, a sense of who's saying what. The Puritans don't believe in gossip, officially, but unofficially. They live and breathe it, sanctified by scripture and disguised as concern. The path to the market is short, but today, each step feels like a pilgrimage. Every creak of your boots sawless in the packed snow draws attention. Curtains twitch, faces appear for a second in tiny windows, then vanish. The market itself is little more than a cleared patch near the chapel, where tables are dragged out each week to display potatoes, dried fish, and the occasional jar of preserved fruit. Today, there are fewer stalls, fewer wares, but more eyes. You spot Goody Parsons almost immediately. She stands behind her stall like a hawk in a bonnet, arms crossed, flanked by baskets of root vegetables that all somehow look accusing. As you approach, she doesn't speak, but her gaze pings you with surgical precision. "Strange days," she says finally, her voice the texture of dry corn husks. Girls disappearing, footsteps ending mid-path, no signs, no sounds. You say nothing, focused on weighing out your flour, but others are listening. Margaret was no ordinary girl. Someone murmurs nearby. She read things. Another adds, she walked too close to the woods. Even when warned, you pay for the flour with your coins clenched tight in your mitten. But the conversation continues around you, spiraling like smoke in still air. She had a ribbon sewn with red thread. Foreign thread. She asked the minister why the Lord allowed illness. She sang while carrying firewood. Each memory, twisted slightly, reshaped into evidence. Each detail, once mundane, now transformed into a sign of something else. Historians would later argue that these communities suffered from spiritual claustrophobia, that, in places so small and so rigid, any deviation felt like a breach, a hull of the whole ship. And Margaret had deviated, barely, but enough. As you turn to leave, you hear a louder voice cut through the murmurs. "I saw her," Eliphile Cooper calls out. He stands near the well, eyes wide, cheeks flushed not from cold, but conviction, by the well. Just before dusk yesterday, she had no cloak, no shoes. She looked toward the woods, and then, he pauses, milking the moment, and then her footprints ended. Right there, near the snow line, they just stopped. A silence spreads, heavy, dense, dangerous. Then someone else speaks softly, but with weight. "And that's near her house, isn't it?" They don't point. Your house. The one closest to the well. The one at the edge of the commons. The one with rosemary growing out of season, and a daughter who once stirred soap with the wrong hand. You clenched the bag of flour tighter, heart pounding in your ears. You turn slowly. You don't argue. You know better. Running invites suspicion. Speaking invites contradiction. Silence, at least, allows a chance to become invisible. You walk back home without looking up, your boots crunching the path like a metronome counting down to something you don't want to reach. Back at the house, your mother is sweeping the doorstep in long, precise strokes. Not for cleanliness, for control. She looks up as you approach. They're talking. You say simply. She nods, still sweeping. They always talk. No, you insist. They're talking about us. She pauses. The broom stills. Her eyes harden. You stare at her, confused. "What? Bake," she repeats. "Bread, the plain kind. Deliver it to the houses. 3 loaves, warm, fresh, generous." They can't accuse a girl who feeds their children. You want to argue, but you know she's right. Bread is a currency here. Not just for trade, but for trust. You knead the dough until your hands ache. You add just the right amount of salt. You stoke the fire and watch each loaf rise, brown, and crack in the heat like little bundles of humble salvation. When they're ready, you wrap them tightly in linen and begin your rounds, not because of the cold but because of the faces. At every door, someone answers. No one refuses the bread, but no one smiles. Not really. You're thanked with nods that are too short, eyes that flick past your shoulder, lips pressed tight like lines drawn in sand. When you return, your arms are empty, but your chest is full of dread, of exhaustion, of that terrible tightness that settles in when you realize a door is starting to close on you. And waiting by that door, of course, is Elder Merton. He doesn't knock. He doesn't greet. He just appears. "There was a page," he says. "Found in the woods, torn from a book. Something about roots. Something about herbs. She may have gone willingly," he says, "or been led." You say nothing. You are tired of saying things that get reinterpreted. Elder Merton stares at you for a moment longer, then says, "Be prepared. The truth has many forms. but only one is permitted. You close the door behind him and slide the bolt into place. It clicks loudly in the silence of your home. That night, the family eats in near silence. The bread is still warm, but no one comments. Your brother picks at his crust. Your mother watches the flames too closely. Your father, who once read aloud from scripture with such confidence, says only, "It's colder tonight." You lie in bed, eyes open, waiting. Margaret is still gone. And it's coming. Morning rises reluctantly over Salem village, filtering through a sky the color of wet slate. The sun is little more than a faint pressure behind the clouds, and the frost that clung to window panes the night before remains, undisturbed and glinting like salt. You rise slowly from your cot, joints stiff, skin dry, dreams unfinished. The air feels different today. Not colder, not darker, simply heavier, as if the village has inhaled, but forgotten to exhale. The house is still. You dress in silence, folding wool and linen over skin like armor. Every motion is deliberate now. You understand, in a way you did not before, that being seen is a danger. But being invisible is worse. Outside, the world crunches beneath your boots. The snow is hard-packed, rimmed with dirt, and etched with the crisscrossing trails of chickens, children, and something else, something barefoot, dragging. You pause near the well. The bucket hangs slightly off-center. The rope has been coiled tightly, neatly, in a way your father would never do. A small detail, easily missed, but here, in Salem, even the unnoticed has weight. Today you are summoned, not invited, not welcomed, summoned. That word ancient, ecclesiastical, and final hangs in your mind as you walk to the meeting house. The bell hasn't rung. There is no feast day, no election. Yet people are gathering, quietly, purposefully. You enter last. Inside, the air is dry, tinged with candle smoke and anticipation. Reverend Harrow stands at the front, beside Elder Merton. Neither man speaks. They don't need to. The room is full. The bench is lined with the same faces you've seen your entire life. Familiar, yes, but not friendly, not today. No prayers are offered, no psalms are sung. Instead, the Reverend opens the book and reads without preamble. So shalt thou put the evil away from among you. Deuteronomy, plain and unembellished. His voice is calm, not raised, but each word is cut with purpose. He closes the Bible and lifts his gaze. We are not here to accuse, he says. We are here to discern. Of course, that's a lie. They're here to accuse. But they want it to feel like Scripture gave them permission. It begins slowly, as these things always do. Goody Parsons, lips tight as dried quince, stands and speaks. I have witnessed behavior inconsistent with godly humility, she says. Late walks, unwatched hours, eyes that linger where they ought not. Goody Hawkins, next, with a voice that shakes only slightly, recalls improper attentiveness to herbs. She mentions rosemary by name. The room shifts. A murmur, barely audible, ripples through the crowd like wind through stiff grass. Eliphile Cooper, eager as always, stands with a kind of fervor that seems larger than his small frame. I heard laughter, he says, during a reflection circle. Laughter, at a psalm, your stomach tightens. It was a joke, small, thoughtless, weeks ago. And now it is Scripture, but no one names you directly, not yet. Instead, they build the shape of you from implication, a silhouette of suspicion, a hushed echo of rebellion. No louder than a whisper, but more enduring. Historians have long debated whether this practiced public accusation, without explicit naming, was a method of psychological control or merely the natural outcome of collective belief. In this moment, it feels like both. You are neither present nor absent in their words. You are inferred, and that is enough. Then Reverend Harrow speaks again. There was, he says slowly, a joke made about my hat. The room stills. You remember the moment, barely, a quiet comment, shared in passing with your brother. He had laughed. You had laughed. It had meant nothing. It means something now. It is not the hat. The Reverend continues. That troubles me. It is the spirit behind it. The mocking spirit, the irreverent spirit, the spirit that sows unrest. He closes his Bible. We are not yet at the naming, but we are at the watching. That word watching settles over the congregation like ash. It's permission, thinly veiled, permission to observe, to report, to judge. They nod, one by one, slow and solemn. It is not hatred they feel, it is duty, and that is worse. You leave the meeting house with your head bowed, not out of shame, out of strategy. The snow crunches under your feet. You pass the well again. The rope is still coiled in that strange way. The snow around it has been disturbed, but not by footsteps leading away, only toward. And there, in the packed snow, half erased but still visible, is a circle, faint, incomplete, a mark drawn by something wet water, or perhaps a finger pressed into the snow. You do not linger. At home, the fire is burning low. No one speaks. Your father sharpens a knife that doesn't need sharpening. Your mother folds linen that is already folded. Your brother sits still. That night, as the wind turns and the trees bend and the silence grows sharp, it comes again. The knock, not loud, not urgent, 2 taps, precisely timed. Not whined, not animal. And this time, you do not ask yourself whether it was real. Because this time, your father looks up, and he heard it too. Morning unfurls in shades of lead. The air smells of frozen dirt and wood smoke, and the sky hangs low, an oppressive lid over Salem's slow, stifled breath. You rise mechanically now. The days have taken on a rhythm, though not a comforting one. Each task, each step, each glance bears the burden of performance. You know you are being watched, and worse, you are being measured. Today, you are to report to the town square not for worship, nor for any feast day, but for correction. The word arrived by mouth. No paper, no bell, just a whispered instruction from a neighbor who did not quite meet your eyes. Correction, here, does not mean learning. It means punishment. You are not told what exactly you've done, only that some in the community have raised concern. That phrase, smooth and bloodless, now precedes the splinters that follow. The square is colder than usual, as if the weather has aligned itself with the tone of the day. A crowd has gathered, small, but dense. Faces you've known since infancy sit behind unfamiliar expressions, disappointment, confusion, moral certainty. Mercy stands near the chapel, hands tucked into her sleeves. She does not move. At the center of the square, the stocks await. Rough-hewn oak, worn smooth in the neck notch. The wood glistens with condensation. It smells of sap and old shame. You do not cry. Crying is dangerous. You approach, kneel, lower your head. Your wrists slide into the side grooves. Your neck settles into the central arch, and the beam comes down. It locks with a quiet finality. You are now a part of the structure. A fixture, an object to be examined. No one speaks at first. That is worse than the words to come. Then, slowly, the murmurs begin. Goody Parsons walks a measured circle around you. Her commentary is almost clinical. She always walked fast. She smiled in the wrong places. She asked about meanings, not messages. From the side, you hear Eliphilate's voice. The devil enters first through questions. A boy throws a clump of snow that shatters on your shoulder. He laughs. The laugh is not scolded. A goat bleats loudly nearby. You cannot see it, but the sound is startling, absurd. For a brief second, something inside you wants to laugh too, not from humor, but from the sheer strangeness of it all. You suppress it. You stay silent. Historians still debate the role of public punishment in early New England, whether it was intended as deterrence, humiliation, or purification. Here, now, in the stocks, it is all three, but more than that, it is ritual. It allows the community to shape its own fear into something tangible. You become their vessel. The hours pass slowly. Your muscles ache. The wood bites deeper into your skin. The cold creeps under your collar, into your bones. The snow doesn't fall in flakes today, but in shards fine, sharp, unkind. Each one lands like a thought, you dare not speak. Eventually, someone offers a cup of water. Mercy, perhaps. You do not look up. You drink, because refusal would be another offense. As dusk approaches, the stocks are opened, quietly. No words of release, no benediction. You stand slowly, legs trembling, vision blurring. No one offers a hand. You walk home alone. Your mother does not greet you at the door. She's kneading bread. Her fingers sunk deep into dough, as though she's trying to wring something out of it. Your father sits silently by the hearth, whittling the handle of a spoon that does not need carving. The only sound is the scrape of steel on wood. You retreat to the back room. Your skin is raw. You wash with cold water, flinching at the sting. The redness will fade. The memory will not. As night falls, you hear distant singing, not hymns. A girl's voice, thin and clear, weaving through the trees, Margaret, or something that wants to sound like her. You press your face to the window pane. The forest stands still. The snow glows faintly under the moon, and somewhere just past the well, just beyond the fence movement, a pale figure, gliding, too smooth, too slow. You step back. You do not tell your family what you saw. They would not believe you. Or worse, they would believe it was your fault. The 13th day since Margaret vanished arrives under a low, yellow sky and unnatural colour that makes even the snow look spoiled. Overnight, a cold wind from the northwest had scoured the fields clean, stripping the trees bare of their half-frost coats and piling drifts like broken waves against fences and stoops. You awaken to this stillness, the kind that presses in around the ribs and makes the floorboards seem reluctant to creak. Your mother says nothing as she hands you the broom. She sweeps as you sweep, as though the act itself might keep the house tethered to some version of normal. But there is no more normal, not here, not anymore. By mid-morning, word begins to travel not as gossip, not even as warning, but as scripture. Goody Parsons claims that Margaret's spirit has been heard again. Not seen, not chased, not glimpsed but heard, humming the same song she used to sing while drawing water. And she wasn't alone. Two others, Eliphalet's cousin, and a widowed farmer whose name no one quite remembers, claim they heard it as well. Not quite outside, not quite inside. A sound that came from under the floor, or through the wall, or behind the well. None of the villagers say what they fear, but they move as though a decision is being shaped, word by word, look by look. And as always, when something cannot be understood, it must be destroyed. By noon, they begin to gather. It starts with Reverend Harrow's sermon scheduled, unannounced, yet still attended as though compulsory by every soul who does not wish to become suspect themselves. The chapel is nearly full, though no one makes eye contact. Children are held closer, scarves are wrapped tighter. The candles along the windowsill flicker, not from draught, but from restraint. Even the flames seem hesitant. Reverend Harrow does not open the book at first. He stands with his hands folded over it, as if weighing whether the words inside are still sufficient. When the Lord removes his favour, he says slowly, "It is not always with thunder or fire. Sometimes he withdraws by degrees, like breath, like light, like warmth." He pauses. The room holds still. Even the floor does not pop. A presence has departed from this place, he continues. And in its absence, we have allowed things in. No one asks what things. They do not need to. Fear, in Salem, is rarely abstract. It has names, it has faces, and lately, it has yours. A murmur rises, just softly enough to pass for reverence. You sit frozen in your pew, eyes forward, heart like a stone in your throat. You know that this is no longer about Margaret. This is about what she represents, and what you remind them of. After the sermon, no one speaks directly to you, but several walk past and glance at your sleeves. One man mutters at rosemary, when tied with red thread. brings the devil into the kitchen. You do not wear rosemary. You do not own red thread. It does not matter. By evening, the village takes action. The Albright home is cleared. What little remains of Margaret's belongings, her shawl, her bonnet, her little collection of verses copied in charcoal are brought to the edge of the village green and burned in a small, low fire that smells more like mould and ink than like purification. No one calls it a punishment. They call it cleansing. The words are chosen carefully, always carefully. You are not asked to attend, but you do. You stand back, beyond the ring of torchlight, your face half obscured by your hood. The smoke rises slowly. Margaret's name is never spoken, not once. But you feel her in the way the villagers stare at the flames, as if daring them to speak in her place. Goody Hawkins tosses a folded ribbon into the fire. You recognize it. It had once tied Margaret's hair, back when she laughed more freely. It shrivels immediately, curling in upon itself like a leaf in summer heat. You wonder whether anyone else remembers. You stay until the last flame dies. On the way home, you pass by the well. The snow around it has been disturbed again. Bare footprints, deep and close together. No tracks leading to them. No tracks leading away. Just 5 perfect prints, and a broken circle, etched faintly in the icy crust. You do not tell your family, not this time. Your brother would not understand. Your mother would fear for your soul. Your father might stop looking you in the eye. That night, you sleep poorly. Dreams come in fragments. Margaret, standing in the woods, her lips are moving, but the song is silent. A second figure behind her, tall, indistinct, veiled in shadow like fog across glass. When you wake, the candle you left unlit is flickering, and the air in your room smells of pine and ash. The next morning begins not with roosters or bells, or the soft crackle of kindling under the hearth, but with silence so profound, it wakes you from sleep like a shout. It's the kind of silence that means the snow has fallen heavily overnight, smothering all movement, soaking up every sound before it can be born. Your breath clouds the air as you sit up in bed. The candle you forgot to snuff still stands upright in its holder, cold and unburnt, though wax has pulled strangely around its base. You touch it. It's warm. You rise slowly, layer on your wool shift, then your dress, then your cloak. The floor is colder than it should be. You move to the window and draw back the curtain. The world outside is white and undisturbed except for one set of footprints. Yours are not the only tracks in the snow anymore. They begin near the back door, pass by the chopping block, and veer off toward the woods, not in a meandering line, not hesitant. These steps were made by someone walking with purpose, and they are barefoot. No one in their right mind would walk barefoot through a New England winter. You dress the rest of the way without speaking. Your hands are slow and uncertain. Every part of your body wants to look again, but you don't, not yet. When you step outside, the air is sharp and metallic, the kind of cold that draws water from wood and cracks bark open like old knuckles. You follow the prints slowly. Each one is clean, perfectly shaped, toes splayed naturally, the heel deep from the pressure of a full step. They do not falter. They do not wobble. Whoever made them was not cold, not afraid. The path winds through the trees behind the well, weaving a trail not toward anywhere but away. Not quite toward Widow Wentham's boundary, but not far from it either. And then they stop, abruptly, no struggle. No sign of turning back. Just one last print at the base of an old, leaning pine and then nothing. No indent in the snow. No scuff marks. No sign of a body falling or a leap being made. Just a sudden, inexplicable end. The forest stands quiet around you, but now the quiet has teeth. You return to the village slowly, the wind at your back now. The sky has turned a strange yellow-grey, and high above, birds wheel in loose, agitated spirals. As you pass the well, you look down into it not because you expect anything, but because something inside you insists. You see only black. That afternoon you are called. Not summoned, not with bells or shouts, but with a knock. 3 short raps at the door, not sharp enough to startle, but not timid either. You answer. Elder Merton stands on your threshold, his expression tight, his eyes dark with something he does not name. You're to meet us, he says, in the chapel. Bring nothing. You do as told. To resist would be to confess. The walk there is short, but feels longer than any in memory. Inside the chapel, only 3 people wait: Reverend Harrow, Elder Merton, and Goody Parsons. They do not speak at first. Reverend Harrow gestures for you to sit on the bench facing them. The fire is low in the hearth, casting long shadows that lick at the walls. We've watched, Harrow says, as events have unfolded. His voice is calm, but heavy, like a judge handing down a sentence already decided long before. You've been seen speaking 2 things no one else sees. Going places you should not go. You do not answer. You were close to her. Goody Parsons murmurs, too close, her ways. You adopted them, Elder Merton adds. It's not accusation. It's single quotes s. discernment. We must protect the body of our faith. There it is. Not punishment, not yet. Prevention. They ask no questions. They make no demands. They simply instruct. You are to remain indoors at all hours except worship. You are not to walk unaccompanied. You are not to speak aloud to anything unseen. If you violate this, you will be removed from the village until the spring thaw. And if the Lord does not seem fit to cleanse your heart by then, well, they do not finish that sentence. You return home with your ears ringing. That night, sleep does not come. You stare at the rafters above your bed, your blanket pulled tight. You listen to the wind scrape snow across the roof, and to your mother's low breathing through the wall. And then you hear it, the humming, not near, not far, not from outside the house, from beneath it. Soft, measured, the same 5 notes again and again. You do not move, not until it stops, not until the night folds in on itself and presses its hand gently over your mouth. The final night does not arrive with thunder or any violent sign. It slips in like a familiar thought you've been trying not to have quiet, inevitable, almost kind. There is no gust of wind, no flickering of the hearth, no sudden cry from the woods. Instead, it begins just as every other night in the village has begun, with routine, with stillness, with the unspoken sense that something has come full circle. You sit by the fireplace long after the embers have surrendered their glow, watching shadows lengthen and settle into the corners of the room, waiting animals. Your father is already asleep, or at least pretending to be. His hands are folded on his chest, his boots still on. Your mother has not moved from her chair since supper. The wooden spindle rests against her lap, thread undone, forgotten. Your younger brother breathes deeply beneath his blanket, unaware or unwilling to know what stirs beyond the safety of walls. The house does not creak, the wind does not stir. And yet, something watches. You feel it not as a chill, not as fear, but as certainty. There is no reason for you to rise. No chore, no errand, no request, but you do. You rise because the quiet has changed, because there is weight in the stillness now. Because you have been waited for, your cloak is folded neatly on the stool. You wrap it around your shoulders without thought. Your boots are beside the door, their leather stiff with cold. You step into them, lace them with trembling fingers, and reach for the latch. The candle by the hearth is unlit, yet its wick glows faintly red as if it has just been used by someone else. You open the door. Snow blankets, everything in that way only fresh snow can. Completely, thickly, without judgment. The fences are softened into gentle humps, the rooftops hidden beneath silent white crowns. There is no breeze, no sound, just the crunch of your boots as you step out and the sight of her, Margaret. She stands where the forest begins, just beyond the final fence post. Her feet are bare, her dress moves gently, though the trees do not. Her hair is neatly braided down her back, her expression is unreadable, but it is not cruel. It is not sad, it is simply waiting, and she is not alone. Behind her, within the trees, are others, many, dozens, perhaps more. Some you recognize immediately, even through the veil of memory and disbelief. Ruth, the girl who vanished during the storm 2 winters ago. Old Barrow, the man who drowned in spring thaw, his body never found. Even the silent-faced woman from last year's Easter sermon, the one who never spoke, who was never seen again. They stand between the trees like sentinels, not threatening, not beckoning, simply watching. Margaret lifts her hand. You do not pause. You step forward. There is no voice in your head warning you away, no voice in the night calling you back. The bells do not ring, no dogs bark, the village sleeps, and if anyone sees, they choose not to intervene. Or perhaps, they know this moment must happen, that it was always going to happen. You pass the well, its stones are glazed with ice, its bucket is gone. You pass the chapel. Its windows are dark, and the cross above the door seems smaller than it once did. You pass the stocks, now half buried in snow. The post still bears a dark smear from the last punishment handed out, one that involved you. You follow Margaret into the trees. The others part, forming a narrow path. The snow beneath your boots is firmer now, crunching with each step like brittle glass. The air is colder, but your hands no longer feel it. Your breath no longer clouds the air. The trees above close in, branch over branch, until the sky ye little more than a memory. You do not ask where you're going, you already know. There is no destination in the forest, only release. You walk for what feels like hours, or maybe just minutes. Time bends strangely here. The hum begins again, low and distant, the same 5 notes Margaret always sang at the well, only now others join in. One by one, soft voices layer the melody, weaving it into something ancient, something that does not require words. You find yourself humming, too, not because you remember the tune, but because it remembers you. The trees open into a clearing. Snow drapes the ground like untouched linen. The moon above is huge and pale, its light dimmed by a strange haze. Margaret steps forward into the center. She turns to you. For the first time, she smiles. And then she extends her hand. You take it. You do not feel your feet anymore. You do not feel the cold. You feel a softness bloom inside your chest, a warmth that rises through your shoulders, up into your throat, until all thoughts quiet. All pain drifts away, the forest tilts, the snow lifts, and the night finally closes around you like a promise kept. Now, everything is slow, the air, the snow. Your heartbeat each moves as though underwater, thick and gentle. The world is no longer sharp around the edges. It curves inward, inviting rest. The trees above do not loom anymore, they shelter. The ground no longer presses against your boots. It cradles them. You are no longer walking. You are gliding. You are no longer breathing. You are floating inside breath. There are no more names to recall, no more whispers to dodge, no more trials, no more tests, no more eyes judging your every word, every gesture, every silence. Here, there is no fire and brimstone, no scripture to memorize, no chapel pews that bruise your knees, only quiet, only soft, swirling quiet. The faces around you, once strangers, are no longer distant. They are part of something you always sensed but could never name. They do not ask anything of you. They do not expect redemption or penance. They only drift beside you, gently, endlessly, like leaves on a river. You do not know if this is death, or sleep, or something in between. But it is warm, it is kind, it is still. So now, let go. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your eyes fall closed and stay there, not in fear, but in comfort. Whatever came before no longer matters. Whatever comes next will wait. The snow is falling again, soft, slow, safe. Good night.